He has a wonderful background, and I think he would be a great representative for that area. Mo Davis.
Yeah, Mo Davis, and I'm happy to say that he has also signed the No Toxic Money Pledge. Yay! Like Jenna and like Holly White that I mentioned last week. So yes.
Al McSurley sent this article that I appreciated very much, and it was polling both Tillis and Trump in North Carolina. I found it encouraging. Trump is now
admit somebody who I can't recognize, and I've never seen a number.
friends. Mute yourselves and sing along with Randa. You're muted. You're muted, Randa.
Karen, can you mute Aunt B? Because she doesn't know how to do it.
Oh.
Yes, sing along, but not with Mitch, with me. For those of you.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Randa, you're back on mute.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So that's Beatrice.
Yes.
Yes.
Amy.
Yes, Amy. You got it, Karen? Okay, Karen.
She's muted now.
Okay, here we go. So the lyrics are in the chat. Ain't gonna let nobody we're gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to freedom land. Ain't gonna let no heartbreak turn us around, turn us around, turn us around. Ain't gonna let no heartbreak turn us around. Gonna let nobody turn us around, turn us around. Turn us around, ain't gonna let nobody turn us around. We're gonna keep on walking, keep on talking, marching on to freedom land.
Welcome to Tuesdays with Tillis. I don't know about you, but looking at everybody's faces always just lifts my heart so much. Thank you so much for your faithfulness. That requires a kind of fearlessness that I have much more when I'm with you than when I'm with myself. So Can you raise your hand? Anybody? So if we don't, is someone here? Speak
Mary
up, you
Mudd.
can unmute. Mary, welcome, Mary Mudd. Welcome. That's so wonderful. Mary and Lori are eight shots in the back. And so just to kind of, I know prayer is not a word that everyone's comfortable with, but I know that we all understand that the accumulated good wishes of this particular community and the world can help his healing and just to send him love. And another person that I want to lift up is an activist, Tiana Arata, who is 20 years old, who is a Black Lives Matter organizer in San Luis Obispo, California. She organized a protest, a peaceful protest. 300 people came. It became unruly, perhaps violent, I don't know. They charged her with a felony, a 20-year-old kid who organized this protest, and several misdemeanor charges. And I know that we all understand that we can start out by having a peaceful protest. And what we're seeing is that it's often the police that make it turn violent, or the Proud Boys, as in Portland recently. Last night we watched some videos of Charlotte, North Carolina protesters, Black Lives Matter protesters, that were outside the convention, and the police were violently attacking them. So I just want to hold all these people in our hearts. I know we're doing that, but something about mentioning that collectively, it may help us know how to be in solidarity with these people who are fighting the same thing we're fighting.
Vicki, can you hear me?
Yes, I hear you.
I meant, I just wanted to say that I read this morning that Mr. The man that was shot in the back, at this point in time, he's paralyzed, but they don't know if it's from the waist down, but they don't know if it's permanent. So that's another thing to hold in our hearts.
Yes. Yeah, Jacob Blake. Yes. Yes. Thank you. So our topic this week is the Postal Service, and it seems more timely than ever after the hearings yesterday. I know we're all following this closely, and I want to have us all kind of share what we're learning about this, because I think we're going to have to keep the pressure on. And I had this idea about how to structure it. I was thinking we could talk about why it's so important to our democracy and to America. Just open that up. And then a little bit about the history, because that's really important to put it in this larger context. And then what we can do. How does that sound? Is that okay? So let's start with, and just popcorn style, you can speak up or put it in the chat if you don't want to do that, or you can't get your word in edgewise. Why is this important?
Veterans and seniors depend on prescriptions arriving in the mail and arriving on time before the supply on hand runs out.
And checks.
The USPS is one of the largest employers of veterans as well.
It's something we count on as Americans. We know that our mail is coming. We're going to get the mail. It unifies all of us. It is one thing we all have in common, and we cannot let that be destroyed.
I think it's important because one more thread of the Constitution that's being ripped out and shredded.
That was my point too, Bess. I was going to say, I think it's important because this is just clearly, undeniably voter suppression. And I thought that was illegal. This is a criminal act that he's levying against us. And the fact that he can do it, get away with it, just makes my blood boil.
Let's not let him.
I know he's getting away with it because he's put in place people who will enable him. But this should not be allowed to happen. How can this happen?
Yeah.
I don't get it.
In the tiny letter that you forwarded, the article with Bill Moyer, it's a long article, but to me, that is the blueprint since the 70s for.
Okay, but we're not there yet. We're still talking about why is this important? Then we're going to talk about history, Susan. Just hold that a minute. Thank you for reading that article because we're going to get there. But classes, I feel like both of your points are really crucial. It's voter suppression. Trump admits that it's voter suppression.
Yes.
And it's a criminal act.
Absolutely. And I think not having checks delivered, having the postal service, our beloved postal service, be such a central focus and point in our lives, all of our lives. It's like Santa Claus coming every day. You know, we love the postal system. All that is secondary. It's important, probably equally as important, but it's secondary. The primary thing is he is levying this criminal act against America. He's allowed to do this. I don't understand it. He should not be able to just arbitrarily do this. And then to have his $2 million donor come in, the guy who's been there for 30 years gets just pushed aside.
Yeah.
And somebody come in because he's donated $2 million who knows nothing about postal operations. And then just flat out refuses to put things back the way they were. And to say, I didn't know that was happening. Well, if you're the postal inspector, you're supposed to know, I don't care how long you've been in the job. You're supposed to know that this is going on.
So Bessie,
it's just beyond me.
I don't know if Bessie was able to finish what she said. I couldn't really hear you, Bessie.
I'm sorry. I hope I didn't talk over.
No, you're fine, classes. Bessie, go right
ahead. I was just trying to keep it short. That's all.
Just say it again. Just say it again.
That I believe that is one more thread of the Constitution that's being pulled.
Yes.
Ripped to shreds.
Yes. Yes. Important point. Yes. Go ahead, Scarlett.
This may be a minor point, but for some people, their postman or woman is their connection with the outside world. And those postal workers get to know those people that live by themselves, check on them. And we in our neighborhood, we know our delivery woman's name. And she is the type that if there is a death in the community, because we're a 55 plus community, she'll send a sympathy card. I mean, there is that personal connection. And I would just hate to lose that, especially for people who live by themselves.
Yeah.
Right. Michael, and then Mary Grace. Michael Eisenberg.
I think the thing that's really disgusting in this whole situation are the 251 Republicans that have been elected by the people in their states, minus 20 some who voted with Democrats last Saturday to hold
26
accountable, that are complicit
Yes.
in letting this man break the law, which means to me that they are accessories after the fact and they should all wind up in jail. This is absolutely disgusting that they are allowing their power to be.
Well, Michael.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Wait, we have a line up here. Listen, if you're just joining us, we're talking about why this is important, what's happening with the Postal Service, and then we're going to get to the history and then what we can do. Mary Grace and then Maple.
Thanks. Hi, everybody. I can't help but the quote from DeJoy that's sticking in my craw is saying that he was going to wait till after the election to dismantle everything.
Yes.
Which is such a telling thing. I mean, it is that from when they decided we had to have this retirement stuff all put away ahead of time, they have been trying to undermine, which I guess we'll get to in the history part, the post office, so that it can be privatized, so that they can then just screw everybody and do whatever they want and make more money. I mean, it's just so connected. And the fact is that he can wait until after the election, but then he can do it before the new president is installed, before he is removed, which means it's imperative that we get this guy out of there somehow.
So, yeah, why
That's
is it
all part of their strategy.
Mary Grace.
All part of their strategy. This was purely by design. They decided to do it. We'll take it out. People complain. We'll say, well, we will stop doing it. Well, the damage is already done.
Okay, Bessie?
I had another thought after Scarlett's. I'm sorry, Charlotte. Scarlett, I always want to call you Charlotte. I know better. I'm sorry. After Scarlett's comment, for some of the elderly, especially the shut-ins, the mail is their day. Receiving mail brightens their day. They live for the mail.
Like Santa Claus.
Taken away from them or not knowing whether or not they're going to get mail today. Especially they're talking about in the rural areas, maybe reducing the frequency to a couple of times a week instead of every day. Think of what that's going to do to people who are getting the mail every day. That's their life right now because they're sick and shut in.
Okay, Julie?
I remember when I was growing up that a lot of Black Americans that had college degrees worked for the post office because there weren't other jobs available to them. So it's been a good employer and still is for veterans as well. So I think that's a reason that it's important.
Thank you. Maple? You might be muted, honey.
Okay. Yeah, it's good to be here. Yeah, what everybody was saying, the privatization piece. And there's something I heard just last night, maybe everybody already knows about that, the Amazon, it's personal for Trump about Jeff Bezos to take away his cheap mailing option and make him less of a billionaire. That was part of the plan too. It's a personal crazy against him. And then I thought, well, also Bezos now owns the Washington Post, so it could be suppressing, press, making them less powerful and have less money. He thinks he's going to bring down Jeff Bezos. So that was a surprising piece. And I usually don't get thinking too much about that kind of stuff, but it's pretty strong because Bezos, is the richest man in the world or whatever. So that was something that I found was quite important, and I just heard about it. And the military, we want to switch the money from the military to the post office, which is Code Pink's plan. So, the money's there. Don't make us beg. We know it's there because they gave it to Wall Street, for the virus. So that's another thing. You could just switch it right over. Thanks.
Good point. Ellen? You might be muted, honey.
Okay, I'm unmuted. Those machines cost millions of dollars. There was no effort to recycle them, do anything with them but destroy them. And that's destruction of federal property.
Good.
So this is crime being committed right in front of our faces. And then he says, I will not put them back. But some postal people in Washington State are putting them back themselves, I read. So.
Yeah, this gets back to Classic's point about it's a crime, what is happening. Yeah, Vicky.
Yeah, I want to get back to your question about why it's important that we have the mail. And there has been a lot of discussion about getting it. But I think we also need to think about being able to send it, being able to send our bills in on time so that we're not charged penalties, being able to send things to people who depend on them in other ways. And so it goes both ways. And of course, we know that DeJoy has millions of dollars of his own money invested in competitive delivery services. So the whole issue of conflict of interest is one that really needs to be addressed very, very soon.
Thank you so much. Okay, so let's move on to, this is not just about Trump. I'm sorry, Lori, go right ahead.
Yeah, one of the things that frightens me about this is because the Postal Service is a central force that affects the entire country.
Yes.
Every single resident in this country can be affected by it. It's an incredible source of control. If it's manipulated poorly, it affects everybody poorly. So if it's as it stands with Republican control, we can all be manipulated. And if it's privatized, again, we can all be subjected to the whims of a corporation. Every single human being who's a resident here can be subjected to this enormous network. That frightens me.
Karen, I think Liv had her hand up a long time.
Go ahead.
I didn't see her hand.
Who, Bessie?
Liv.
I didn't see
Liv.
her.
Go ahead, Liv.
Okay. I was starting to put it in the chat, but basically, we all depend on words for our communication. And the diverse cultures that we represent and the diverse languages that are essential in communication is another reason why we need to keep the Postal Service intact, because there are many people who cannot communicate in any other way than through the mail.
Okay, any last words about why this sabotage of the post office is so important to fight before we move on to the history? Just speak.
Yes.
Yes.
I just wanted to go on about what Ellen said about the sorting machines. That was the one thing he was adamant about yesterday, that they would not be restored. They would not be, set up again, and they have been destroyed. I think the damage is done. I think that was the damage. And so we're going to vote in person somehow or take our ballots down to the Board of Elections.
Herb had his hand up.
Herb. Go ahead, Herb.
A couple other things. One, if they privatize it, the people in rural areas will not get service. One of the postal services things is everybody gets mail in this country. The other thing is, if they privatize it, what's going to happen to the international mail? We depend a lot on international mail, like for your military and stuff. They send a lot of stuff to military bases. All that's probably going to get really delayed, really bad. And their absentee ballots, if they come in from the military, they're probably not going to get here on time. So,
thank you, Michael Eisenberg.
Yeah, why don't if they're worried about losing money, why don't they go back to something that was a very successful thing that the post office did for many, many years, which was to be a bank. where they can be in rural areas where people can't afford to go to a bank because they can't afford the fees to open a checking account or maintain a checking account or pay their late fees and overdraft fees. The post office was a very successful operation as a bank. Rural communities would be thrilled to have that service back, and so would plenty of people living in the areas where they just don't have enough money to bank at a regular bank.
Now, I could just hug you. I would hug you if this wasn't a Zoom call, because that question leads us exactly into the next section, which is, why can't they? Why can't they, instead of having these check cashing businesses that are taking massive amounts of money from the people who can least afford it and
lenders
money to the wealthy, why can't they?
Because of the law that Susan Collins sponsored in 2006.
Right, David, yes, because of the law that Susan Collins sponsored in 2006. Say more about that.
From entering into any kind of new businesses. It also capped them on how much they can charge, and it put a huge burden on them because it requires them to have 75 years of money to pay for the postal workers' retirements, which nobody else in the world does.
That's $5 billion a year.
Yeah, for 75 years.
For their health care.
Yeah, so 2006, Susan Collins did this bill that undermined the Postal Service. It was called the Accountability and Efficiency Act, but its effect was to ensure the undermining of the post office. But the history of undermining the post office goes back before that. Who wants to talk about that?
How about you?
Okay, well,
Karen, does it have anything to do with, there's some governing body of the post office that says that the post office is, if it's privatized, the private companies don't want to serve in these rural areas because it's not profitable for them. Mm-hmm. So the post office is there to take care of those people who private industry won't take care of. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if what you're talking about has anything to do with that, but that's another factor too.
Okay. Okay.
It's not money making thing. Private industry don't want anything to do with it.
So in that article that's in the tiny letter that Susan referred to, it's an interview with Bill Moyers, and it talks about how this started with Charles Koch. Am I saying his name right? Is it Koch?
Koch. One of the Koch brothers.
It's Coke.
Coke.
Like Coca-Cola.
Things go way worse with Coke.
He started this way back in the Reagan administration. He started, and you read Dark Money, some of you, Americans for Prosperity and Freedom Works, which were basically a shadow Republican Party. And his whole point was it's a well-coordinated and well-funded movement to turn much of the U.S. government over to for-profit corporations. Right. But this has been going on now for decades. The looting of our federal treasury, the privatization of things like prisons, and they're aiming for the post office.
Can you imagine how much it would cost to send a first-class letter if UPS or FedEx was running the post office? Wouldn't be 55 cents.
Right. Other things about the history of this, because there's more to it than just Trump recently trying to wreck the post office to suppress votes.
I'd like to add something.
Yes.
The fight it was a fight to get rural delivery. We forget about that part that it wasn't just automatically, the post office is going to go everywhere. The postal delivery didn't start out as a government run, and there were always forces that didn't care about anything that didn't make a profit.
This whole thing is a nefarious attempt by Republicans, wealthy Republicans, that goes back to the 70s, includes Susan Collins, Karl Rove, aimed at one-party rule. That's the whole thing, that the post office is a piece of this larger puzzle.
Right.
It's cutting off every valve to Americans. It's intentionally making it difficult for Black and brown people to vote. That is period. It's a one-party rule goal.
And also very good, yes. And also ruled by a tiny minority. And they've been so successful at that, right? In the 2018 election in North Carolina, we had half Republicans, half Democrats. We sent 3 Democrats to the House and 10 Republicans. Minority rule. Yeah, go ahead. Cecil. Oh, whoops. You got to unmute yourself.
Bottom line, though, is an effort by the ruling wealthy class to destroy any public service in the United States. Any do not want the government to do anything that the private sector can do for a profit. And it comes down to that.
Right. Thank you for that. And, is healthcare for all ever going to be a profitable enterprise?
No.
The Postal Service, it's called the Postal Service. It's not called the Postal Business.
Very good.
It's a service. It's a government service to the people of this country.
It was never intended to be profitable.
Anything that serves the people should not be for profit.
Right. And as Rebecca said earlier, the importance of that service is a unifying force in this country. It's the only thing that really brings North Carolinians together with people from California. It's all the same. It's delivering the mail. We might differ on how we organize schools. We might differ in terms of our taxation policies, sales taxes versus property taxes, but the post office is that single unifying force.
Great. That's so great. Yes. There's a real through line here, I think, about the people that want to operate things like healthcare, the Postal Service, for profit, which is always going to screw a whole lot of people. And the majority of this country, 91% of us, love the post office.
Karen.
Yeah.
Also from that article, Mitch McConnell, everybody thinks that he had solely the judges in mind. The post office is his other project.
Right.
And, I just really hope people read that article. It's a long article, but it really fills in a lot of these pieces.
Yeah, so thank you for mentioning Mitch. Mitch McConnell, otherwise known as Moscow Mitch, blocked appointments to the Postal Service for 5 years. So there wasn't a quorum for 5 years. It's supposed to be nonpartisan, but he blocked the appointments so that it could be majority Republican. And then just one more thing was, and those of you who watched the hearings know this yesterday, was that there were, like a couple hundred nominees for his position, DeJoy's position, but Mnuchin called in the Republican members of the post office. I'm really having trouble not using 4-letter words, and rammed Mnuchin through DeJoy through, because they knew that he would do exactly what Trump told him to do.
DeJoy wasn't even up for the position. He wasn't even one that, he was not vetted until Mnuchin came into the picture.
Recommended.
Yeah, good.
Yeah, and so now none of the Board of Governors, all of the Board of Governors have also been appointed by Trump. So the whole thing is under Trump's control.
And they're all old white men, every one of them.
I feel like we're getting here to both why this is such an important issue and why it has galvanized really huge parts of America. And also why there is some hope that we might win on this one, because, Republicans love the Postal Service too. And if we can somehow there were Republicans who voted in the House to fund the Postal Service. So we could begin to turn now toward what can we do about this? What should we be doing?
Karen, one more point, and it's going to digress for a second. You talk about the Board of Governors being all controlled by Republicans. The Republicans have blocked the Federal Election Commission. They don't even they can't even come up with a quorum. They're a non-functioning entity that can't even control anything that has to do with an election because there's only 3 out of 6 that have been appointed. There's no quorum. So
is that because of Mitch too, Mike?
No, yeah, probably, but this is not something new. It's been going on for a long time. They've been neutered.
Okay, thanks.
Karen, speaking of neutering the public spaces and the public services that we depend on, the post office for many is a symbol of coming together as a meeting space. It was where you used to be able to go to get your tax forms and your voter registration forms, and people would go there for driver license applications and so on. And they are gradually stripping us of our ability to join together as community, whether it's from the post offices or requiring permits for us to stand in public spaces and so on. It's one part of a very big and nefarious picture that we're fighting here.
That's right.
So there's
also issue passports.
I want to speak.
Passports, yes, passports too.
Okay, Maggie, go ahead.
Yes, well, you were saying we should remember the history. And a couple of you have mentioned the Postal Service Bank. When I first worked in Monte Vista, Colorado, a tiny town in the San Luis Valley, 7,500 feet altitude, I put my $20 a month into the Postal Service every month. And people did this. Secondly, somebody mentioned that we didn't always have rural delivery, but then we did. I mean, it took a while to get RFD, rural free delivery. We need to remember all of those things in the history. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you very much. Can we turn a bit toward where is the resistance and how can we join it? Where is the resistance to this outrage and how can we join it?
Vote out, protest.
Vote.
That's the most important thing, sure.
Well, the Poor People's Campaign is doing the Moral Mondays now every week, and they really have focused. Yesterday, they really focused on this, just putting the pressure on McConnell, and always, I take their point. Don't talk about Trump without talking about McConnell. It's just, have to remember these powerful connections. They're doing so much damage, but seem like they have thousands of people on these calls, which is very hopeful.
And there are people in the street.
I just want to make sure everybody's on the mailing list, Reverend Barbara's mailing list, Poor People's Campaign. Yes, they're doing great stuff. Yeah.
There were over 800 actions at post offices on Saturday, and the Postal Workers Union is out today. There are 2 local rallies happening. Unfortunately, they're at 12 o'clock, so we can't be there, but there's one at the Kangaroo Drive Post Office in Durham, and there's one in Cary on Academy, and those are starting now. And I intend, if I can, to hop over to Kangaroo Drive when the call is over. But I think we need to stay alert for when those things are happening and show up in support.
Good.
I went to the one in Kangaroo Drive on, Saturday. And the morale piece for the postal workers, I think, is really important as well. As the trucks were leaving, they all honked at the, at the protesters who were there supporting them. And of course, buying stamps and buying, products from the post office is important as well.
Would we have a way of learning in our local areas where these machines are and who we might speak with then to ask them to be, tell them we support them too. Like in Carborough, the postal workers actually came out on Saturday and thanked us for being there. So if we go to our individual post offices and thank them for what they're doing and find out what we can do to support them, just like you've asked us through the weeks, what can we do? So on a very, local level, I'm like, if everybody resisted, amazing. Wow, a non-violent overthrow. But anyway.
I agree with Liv. I think we kind of need to forget about pressuring Mitch McConnell, because maybe I'm the only one who feels this way, but I don't think he responds to pressure. So if we can find something to do locally, like maybe, I don't know, I'm averse to going out in crowds anyway right now, but, I'm going to say this, put it out there. Offer help put the machines back together, just let the local people know that we're behind them if they want to reconstruct these machines, if they're not so destroyed that that's impossible. And whatever else we can do to support them in trying to continue to get the mail out, because I've heard it said that that's in their DNA. That's what they care about, and they don't care what party you're from. They just want to get the mail out.
I think offering support to local postal workers is really important. I agree with that. And I think that these local protests are one way of doing that. And if you are on Move On mailing list and Action Network, you'll be getting offers to sponsor a protest. It's easy to just sign up to do that and show up, and other people will show up with you. Liz.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was at the Carborough Post Office, and it was a wonderful experience. We were masked. We were physically distanced. We did not take any chances, but the response was wonderful. And we were grateful to see that they really appreciated it. We took pictures, and they took pictures. The postal workers took pictures of us. It meant something to them. And in Chapel Hill, one of the grannies who happens to be on this TWT now went to the post office in Chapel Hill, and there was one person demonstrating, but they could recognize each other and cheer each other on. Yeah. It's important, even if you don't sign up. If you've got a sign, show up. It makes them feel good. Thank you.
Good. Karen? Just one thing I want to say about Mitch McConnell. Reverend Barber is one of the most skilled people at this kind of stuff that I know of. And if he thinks that we should pressure Mitch McConnell, I wouldn't discount that. If you're sick of it, I totally understand that. But I wouldn't discount it if you have the energy. And also Tillis and Burr. I do think that overwhelming pressure on Tillis and Burr is helpful, as well as on DeJoy. People have been outside of his house in Washington, D.C. like all night.
And Greensboro. And
also writing to him. I'm going to put his address somewhere once I find it again. If anyone has it, if you could post it in the chat. Go ahead, Penny.
One of the things that I'm aware of being an artist is small businesses through Etsy or, whatever. Small businesses rely on the post office to deliver goods. And I know Trump doesn't like Amazon and he doesn't like Facebook and all that, but, who's going to be delivering our stuff? People need it, for food, people using food delivery and whatnot. Obviously the medicine, the VA that rely, the veterans who rely on medicines. So I think they're shooting themselves in the foot.
We hope so. We hope so.
But I think if we could get small business people to protest as well,
that I think you might have more of a groundswell.
Yeah, one of the most heartbreaking things I saw was a farmer who had ordered like 400 baby chickens because that usually works, and they all died in the mail. So maybe I know. Okay, Ruth, go ahead.
I think one of the things that we can do to put pressure on Mitch McConnell is to send money, if we can, to his opponent who's running against him, because we may not be able to stop him from doing the damage he can do while he's in office, but it might hurt his feelings some if he didn't get reelected. The other thing is that I think it is effective to keep on putting on the pressure, even to people like Tillis and Burr, because after all these many months, Tom Tillis is now jumping up and down and telling everybody to wear a mask and safely distance. So maybe we can get him to jump up and down and defend the post office if we keep on calling him.
That's a really good point. That's a really good point.
And I think even if he doesn't listen to the phone calls, he gets the report of how many people called on which issues.
That's right.
We need to keep his staff busy.
That's right. And, you know, I've learned that some members of his staff actually read the tiny letter. They all get it. And a few of them actually have said that they read it. So that's very interesting.
Has anybody been able to get through to either one of them lately? I haven't.
Only Tillis. Keep going, though. I know. Burr. Does anyone ever get through to Burr?
I get through to the voicemail. I haven't talked to the person for a long time.
Long time.
I one time couldn't even get through back in HB2. I tried calling both senators, and I could never get anybody at Burr's office. And I finally mentioned it because the people in Tillis's office listened very sympathetically and helpfully, even when I wasn't being calm and polite. They were really good, and I thanked them for that. And I also asked them, what's going on with your colleague? He doesn't have anybody answering his phones, and it's really frustrating as a constituent. Next time I called, there was somebody answering the phone.
Interesting. Oh, that's
he doesn't care. He's not running again, so he could care less about us.
Randa.
This is a question in a way, and it's almost aimed at Elena, who was a magician at this. I am having a contemplation about writing to the families of every Republican senator, to their home addresses. And I wonder if somewhere that exists, not their offices, but to try to find their home addresses and address the letter, if possible, if one can find it. And I mean, this may be a project for myself, obviously, the name of their spouse, and just saying, just a letter then to the family. I mean, it sounds perhaps a little insignificant, but I don't know. That's just a thought of.
The first question should be, how can you be married to this person? That should be the first question.
The question used to be, how do you sleep at night? Now it's, how do you sleep with this person, right?
Absolutely. I'm sure if you had to do it all over again, you would not pick the same person to be married to for the rest of your life.
But I think you can get the information from the voter registration listings, which are public, aren't they?
Yes, good.
So the spouse's name should be there on the voter registration rolls.
I think we should be very careful. So Mary Grace here. I think we should be very careful to make sure that whatever we send to people's homes is absolutely non-threatening, non-violent, and carefully worded, and really read it from the perspective of somebody, receiving something in their home mailbox that is negative. So just it's a mess, but we got to just keep that in mind.
Well, how's the mail going to get through? I sent a birthday card to a friend, and I put a sticky inside, a pink sticky, and I said, let me know when you get this. Email me when you get this, because I'm checking to see if the mail is coming to you. Because why am I spending money on birthday cards and postage if it's not going to get there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whatever?
Okay, so my friends, we're going to have to keep paying attention to this and keep paying attention to how to resist this. We have some announcements. Pat, do you want the last word on the Postal Service?
I have a question. Do you have to have a permit to stand with a sign in front of the post office? Can you get arrested for doing that?
No.
We were out there in Hillsborough on Saturday, and it was fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
It depends on the building. Yeah. The federal building more than, well, the post office, we found out, Granny's, more than 10, we needed a permit.
That was in that, Brenda, that was in that particular location. Every municipality has different rules and regs about permits.
Okay, great.
But basically, the post offices are on federal property. Okay. So we had that fight when we were threatened with arrest at a post office in Florida. And they said, you can't be here because it's federal property. And we said, well, federal property is tax funded and we paid for this building and we have every right to be here. And they left us alone. So
yeah, and so I think one thing that we could think about is that all of us have very local post offices, and we could just find out at the post office even if we need a protest, a permit. And I think about 1 million tiny protests may be even more effective than trying to bring all the Tuesdays with Tillis people to one particular post office. So yeah, let's think about that, doing protests at our local post offices, continuing to keep up the pressure. Lib, can you be quick?
Yeah, just in Raleigh, if you stand on the sidewalk, it's a city sidewalk.
Yes.
You don't have to have a permit to stand on the sidewalk.
Well, but that's what we do at Tuesdays with Tillis. We are on the city sidewalk and we have a permit. So it depends on the number of people, if you need a permit or not. But right, with just under 10.
You do not need a permit in Raleigh if you're on the city sidewalk. And as Karen said, it depends on how many you have. So if 3 or 4 people go, it's cool. Don't worry, be happy.
they will throw something at you if you're standing there. I mean, they can. You can be arrested for loitering in some places if you're just standing and you're not walking on the sidewalk. You have to keep walking. So you just need to know the local landscape and what you're facing.
That's right. And Lib's point is well taken. Don't be intimidated. Just show up, because if they say you have to go away, we'll just go away. I mean, no big deal. Right? I want to make sure that I let you all know that Libby and I have been in touch with Ready the Ground. Ready the Ground is an amazing group of people that have been marshals for nonviolent protests for many, many years. They're highly skilled. And this comes out of some conversations that we all have had. And also you'll remember that when Kerwin and Greer were here last week, that was something that they were also interested in joining us in marshal training with Ready the Ground. So we've almost arrived at a date. It will be a one-day training on a weekend. And I'm really hoping that we can draw in Kerwin, Greer, their friends, other people that we know, people that have been on the street doing protests, and Tuesday, of course, with Tillis people. The arrest of this young woman, this 20-year-old Black Lives Matter protester, really is urging me on that we want to, just in case we all have to be on the streets in November, that we all be well trained to be marshals and to keep everybody safe. Does that all make sense? Yeah, so stay tuned. That date will be probably in this weekend's Tiny Letter, because I think they're meeting today. And it was really great that they all decided to work with us. So I'm really grateful to them. They're amazing people. So in a few minutes, we're going to have the Grannies sing, and we're going to have a closing by Scarlett. Any final announcements?
Karen?
Yes, Joy.
I just wanted to mention that curbside voting is a very safe way for elders and other folks with health issues to, particularly during early voting, to go and vote where you're not worrying about ballots getting to you or getting back to the Board of Elections, because they take those ballots at curbside voting and put them right in the counting machine.
Okay, thanks a lot, Joy. Thanks for that. And that's a good reminder for us all to make a voting plan.
You're welcome.
I am going to ask everyone except the grannies, please, to mute yourself. And then, oh, good. Thank you all so much for such great discussion.
Hey. Oh, I'm getting ready to sing a song.
Okay, here we're the grannies, and we're going to sing about the post office today. Just to let you know, a bunch of grannies went to 3 or 4 different post offices last Saturday to stand in support of the Postal Service, and we had no problems anywhere we went. At Raleigh, the police even drove by a few times and didn't say anything to us. We just had a lot of car honks, and it was wonderful. So here we go. 6 different grannies singing your song today.
Who's first?
Ellen.
Ellen?
Unmute yourself.
Okay, sorry. I'm at a protest in front of the post office. We're the raging grannies, and we're raging here today, 'cause someone's messing with our mail, and we're not gonna play. Mailboxes and voting sorters being hauled away. That's got to stop today.
We support our postal service. We support our postal service. It's time to rally round and say, no way you'll shut us down. Save our postal service now.
Slow down the mail, slow down the votes. It's plain as it can be that you're out to save yourself by killing our democracy. Vets denied their medicines and rent checks now delayed. That's got to stop today.
We support our postal service. We support our postal service. It's time to rally round and say, no way you'll shut us down. Save our postal service now.
These tactics risk our precious votes. It's sabotage for sure. We know that what you're doing's just to keep your job secure. We see right through your tricks and lies, a danger to us all. So we'll save our postal service and we'll vote you out this fall.
'Cause we support our postal service. Yes, we support our postal service. It's time to rally round and say, no way you'll shut us down. Save our postal service now.
Thank you, grannies. That was beautiful.
We love that.
I'm at the post office right now. I hope you see my all these people. Okay, this is downtown Cary.
Great. That's so great.
Yep. So thanks, grannies. Week 187. So much to think about. There were 75 of us today on this Zoom call. This weekend, after I read Karen's letter about the topics for this week, I developed an earworm. Do you know what an earworm is? It's that song that goes through your head and you find yourself singing it. Well, the first earworm was The Letter by the Box Tops. And then Joe Cocker. Love that song. And I thought, I got to get this out of my head. Then I started hearing and singing Return to Sender by Elvis. Then Please, 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 Mr. Postman. Wait a minute, Mr. Postman. Then it was Love letters in the sand. And I find myself singing this, and then I had to laugh out loud because the final earworm was "Hello, Mother, Hello, Father." Remember that? The Cam song? The handwritten word is almost gone. We mail, we text, we email because it's efficient. But digital mail cannot match the impact of the arrival of a handwritten letter. I miss opening up the envelope, seeing the handwritten word, and I can remember getting letters as a teenager, and someone would dot the I with a heart, and maybe even catching a whiff of the paper that was used. So I'm encouraging you, go out and buy some stamps. I've even ordered them online. I have some Jimi Hendrix, some Janis Joplin, and some Mr. Rogers stamps. Take time this week to write a letter. Before I started the Zoom call, I finished a letter to a dear friend in Virginia. We've lost touch. Maybe there were some angry words. I don't remember, but I wrote her a letter, and she's going to recognize it by my handwriting even before she looks at the return address. And she's going to smile as she looks at my scrawl. It's going to make her happy, and I'm going to feel that happiness. So I suggest write a letter. Write a letter to yourself. I'm going to sit right down and write myself a letter. Put your thoughts on real paper. And finally today, I'm a bit tired, and I know you all are too, so rest. Take some time to rest, because the comfort of being you is enough. And as the Beatles sang, P.S., I love you. Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Thank you, everyone, so much.
Here's something else you can do. Write letters to voters and tell them to go vote.
And postcards. Good.
We're doing it.
Write letters to prisoners. They're
That's
starting to
right.
restrict prisoner mail. So
That's
flood
right.
those prisons. Go to different websites like Witness Against Torture. Go get prisoners' letters out there too. It's really important. They're feeling so isolated and COVID and impacted. And yeah, thanks.
Don't forget.
Go forward to find letters to send to other states.
Yes, North Carolina's all been sent out, right?
Right. Mm-hmm. And Wisconsin. So there's so many other states out there.
Reclaim Our Vote has postcard campaign, the Poor People's Campaign, to encourage people to vote. So if you want to write postcards, Reclaim Our Vote is ROV. And you can reach communities of color and disadvantaged communities with postcards.
Thank you. Good. And make a voting plan. Thank you so much.